Not only do we have to change things that we operate in our offices, but we have to change the way things operate in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that we face there is, well, there's a lot of challenges, because there's a lot of things that have been done and they've been done the wrong way and they need to change. I'm conservative. And not everyone in Washington, D.C. is a conservative. Not everyone in the Republican Party is a conservative. But we also know that it's taken a long time for us to get where we are today. This nation today doesn't resemble what our founding fathers had in mind. But if we're going to change things and get back, one of the things that we have to do is have a vision of where we're going. What is the vision of where we're going to go? And that's what I think is lacking in this nation today, is a vision. What is America going to look like by the year 2030? Which direction are we going to go? Right now, our nation is like we're meandering out in the wilderness, running from crisis to crisis to crisis. It's from one crisis to the next crisis, and we have no general idea of where we're going. Now, our founding fathers gave us a vision. They had a vision of a government unlike any other government in the history of the world. A government whose focus was on empowering the individual, not a collective. Recognizing that God had given each individual certain rights. And the government's job was to protect those rights. And that there were certain limits on the power of government, but their focus was empowering and recognizing and protecting the rights of the individual, not a collective. Every government that existed prior to this had empowered a group of people, a collective, whether it was by race or religion or even last name, because, of course, aristocracy. There was always one group that had more rights, more power, more authority than another group. And our founding fathers had a revolutionary idea that God created us all equal, everybody, regardless of any of those factors, were created equal. Now, they also knew we had some challenges because what they believed was not what we were doing at the time, but they knew over time that would change. It would be hard, but that would change. So, when you look at this vision that our founding fathers had, I want you to understand their change was not easy. Because they had to take on the field of battle the most powerful military force in the history of the entire world. And it took them 8 years to get there. And it wasn't easy then. It's not going to be easy now. But here's the good news. Things are tough, but they're not near as bad as they were then. We're actually starting a little bit ahead. But there's several similarities. If you look at the top 15 issues that were important back then, or that our founders were facing, they're basically identical to the top 15 issues we face today. Almost identical. But Thomas Jefferson in 1774 was appointed to a committee when he was in the House of Burgess, and they were going to determine which of those issues was the most important. Which one did they have to address most immediately? Keep in mind they already had British troops on the ground in Massachusetts occupying homes. That committee met for just half a day and came back unanimously decided on what the most important issue that they had to face was. And it was a lethargic people. They said it was a lethargic people with the greatest danger to the future and the freedoms of America. So they said, the first thing we have to do is get engagement of the people, so they turned to the church, and they unanimously passed a resolution calling for a day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer for the purpose of awakening the people. Long story short, Thomas Jefferson wrote in his autobiography that once the people were awakened, he said that day, June the 1st, 1774, when people from all over the colony of Virginia came to their churches and they prayed for an awakening. He said it was like bolts of electricity surging through the colony. And people became alert, aware, and on their center, ready to defend their liberties. Now, it was only a third of the people at that time. But he said that was the beginning of the Revolutionary War. Now, I say that to say that's why I'm so excited when we have a town hall and we have this type of turnout. Because I know not everybody that comes is happy with me. Goodness gracious. I lost half of my friends when I took the oath of office. Okay? It's just a fact of being in Congress. But it's important that we have this interchange, and we appreciate you being here. One of the things we're doing in Washington, D.C., and we're going to move quickly into our Q&A, is we know that we have to begin to make this change. When you're going down the path the wrong direction and you're going in a hurry, you got to start putting on the brakes. You got to start turning around and going back the other way. In football, it's called shifting the momentum. If you watch a football game, and if you're a UGA fan, you can watch Georgia. They do terrible in the first quarter. But then all of a sudden, they connect with a couple of plays, and they come back out in the second quarter. They're running the same plays with the same quarterback, the same coaches, the same football on the same field, but all of a sudden, it all starts working because they shifted the momentum. It's irrational, but it's true. We have to shift the momentum in this country away from we're on a path of destruction to where we can actually turn this thing back around. To do that, that's part of our job. In Washington, D.C., one of the things that we've done is we can't continue to fight this stuff on our own. Each individual congressman doesn't have a voice. I'm one out of 435. But when you coalesce with like-minded individuals and you gather around a common set of ideas and principles and you pick those issues that you can influence, then you can begin to see progress. You can begin to see that momentum shift and you can begin to see things happen. Now, you probably haven't realized, but there's a lot of things that we have done in this Congress that have actually begun to shift that momentum. One of the things that we focused on in our office is beginning to rein in these out-of-control agencies. The regulatory agencies have become a fourth branch of our government. In 1959, a gentleman wrote a book and it already identified by 1959 there were four branches of the federal government: the legislative, the executive, judicial, and the regulatory. We're seeing that more than ever with the EPA. We're seeing it with several of our agencies. And so one of our focuses is to begin to rein in those agencies. In fact, last week we passed the RAIN Act. The RAIN Act is a way of basically reining in those agencies. Here in the state of Georgia, when I was in the state legislature, we had the ability to basically veto any policy that the legislature disagreed with that the agencies put into place. They had the power to put in new policies, but the legislature could convene and basically veto any of those policies they didn't like. The RAIN Act does a similar type thing. We passed that out of the House and it's waiting over the Senate. Some other things we passed out of the House this year is the complete repeal of Obamacare. It's still waiting in the Senate. We began dismantling Obamacare piece by piece, and most of those are waiting in the Senate. We have just recently passed several pieces of legislation that begin to dismantle Dodd-Frank. Of course, they're waiting in the Senate as well. We also passed one recently to rein in the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which is the Gestapo of the Dodd-Frank system. And again, that's waiting in the Senate. So the Senate operates a little differently, but we have done a lot to begin to shift the momentum. Why have we been so successful at that? Because there was a group of conservatives that bonded together called the House Freedom Caucus. They decided we're going to pool ourselves together, commit to one another, to support one another, and begin to shift the momentum. And it's been successful. You're not going to hear about it. Most of what you hear about the House Freedom Caucus is a bunch of right-wing kooks that just want to say no to everything. But that wasn't the idea of the House Freedom Caucus. It was to go in and begin to influence things, to start shifting that momentum. So through that, we've been doing a lot of good, and hopefully some more positive will come out of that.